I, 33M, ruined my birthday party when my wife, 32 feuds, announced her pregnancy, and now my entire family is furious. I'm completely lost and don't know how to fix this mess. Let me start from the beginning. Today was supposed to be a day of celebration, my 33rd birthday. My wife had been planning this surprise party for weeks. I had no idea about it until this morning when I woke up to the smell of freshly baked cake and the sound of hushed whispers coming from our kitchen. When I came downstairs, still in my pajamas and hair a mess, I was greeted by my wife's beaming face. She was wearing the apron I got her last Christmas, covered in flour, and looking absolutely beautiful. "Happy birthday, honey," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around me. "I hope you're ready for an amazing day." I couldn't help but smile. My wife has always been the more enthusiastic one when it comes to celebrations. Me? I'm more of a low-key kind of guy, but seeing her so excited made me happy. She told me to get dressed because we were expecting company soon. I thought maybe she'd invited a few of our close friends over for lunch or something. I had no idea what was really in store. As I was getting ready, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was touched by my wife's efforts and excited to spend the day with her. On the other hand, there was this nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. You see, things haven't been great with my family lately, especially with my sister. 35 feuds. I pushed the thought aside, determined not to let it ruin my birthday. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find not just a few friends, but my entire family standing there. My parents, 60M/F, my sister and her husband, 36M, my younger brother, 29M, and his wife, 28 feuds, and even my youngest sister, 26 feuds, who I thought was still traveling in Europe. They all burst into a chorus of happy birthday as they filed into our home. I was genuinely surprised and, for a moment, overjoyed. It had been months since we'd all been together like this. The last time was at Christmas, and even then, things had been tense. My older sister had barely spoken to anyone, and my parents had seemed distracted and worried. But now, seeing them all here, smiling and bearing gifts, I thought maybe things were finally getting better. My wife had really outdone herself with the decorations. Our living room was festooned with balloons and streamers, and a large, "Happy 33rd Birthday" banner hung across the fireplace. The dining table was laden with all my favorite foods. My wife must have been cooking all morning. There was my mom's famous lasagna, Dad's grilled vegetables, and even my youngest sister's specialty guacamole that she usually only makes for Super Bowl parties. As everyone settled in, the atmosphere was light and jovial. Dad was cracking his usual bad jokes. Mom was fussing over whether I was eating enough. I always am, according to her. My younger brother and his wife were sharing stories about their new puppy, and my youngest sister was excitedly talking about her travels. Even my older sister seemed to be in good spirits, chatting animatedly with my wife about some new TV show they'd both been watching. For a while, I let myself relax and enjoy the moment. It felt like old times, before everything got complicated. I found myself laughing at Dad's jokes, even the really bad ones, playfully arguing with my brother about sports, and genuinely interested in my youngest sister's tales of European adventures. My wife flitted about, making sure everyone's glasses were full and plates were never empty, occasionally catching my eye and smiling that smile that still makes my heart skip a beat after all these years. As we finished up the main course and my wife disappeared into the kitchen to fetch the cake, I found myself in a quiet moment with my older sister. She seemed more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. "This is nice," she said softly, gesturing around the room. "I've missed this. Missed us all being together like this." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Me too," I replied. Me too, my wife returned with the cake, a massive chocolate creation with 33 spelled out in candles. Everyone gathered around, singing Happy Birthday, off-key, as is tradition in our family. As I bent to blow out the candles, my wife squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Make a wish, honey." I closed my eyes, wishing for nothing more than for this moment of family harmony to last. If only I'd known what was coming next. After cake and presents, highlights included a new grill from my parents, a vintage record player from my brother and his wife, and a hand-knitted sweater from my youngest sister that she'd apparently been working on during her entire trip. We all settled into the living room. That's when my wife stood up, clinking her glass to get everyone's attention. "I have a special announcement to make," she said, her face glowing with excitement. My heart started racing. I had no idea what she was about to say, but something in her expression made me both thrilled and terrified. "As you all know, we've been trying for a while now," my wife continued, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "And well, we're pregnant. We're going to have a baby." For a split second, the room was completely silent. I felt like I was in a dream, or maybe a nightmare. We had been trying, that was true, but we'd also been using birth control lately because of reasons I hadn't shared with my wife. Reasons that suddenly came crashing down around me as I looked at the faces of my family members. The silence was broken by the sound of shattering glass. My older sister had dropped her champagne flute, her face ashen. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with pain and anger. "How could you be so insensitive?" I was stunned. I'd never seen my sister react like this before. She'd always been the calm one, the peacemaker in our family. But now, she looked like she was about to either burst into tears or start throwing things. My wife's smile faltered. She looked around the room, confusion etched on her face. "I don't understand," she said. "Aren't you happy for us?" That's when all hell broke loose. My sister stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over the coffee table. "Happy?" she spat. "You want us to be happy that you're flaunting your fertility in my face? After everything?" She didn't finish her sentence. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the room. Her husband quickly followed, shooting me a look that was equal parts sympathy and disappointment. My wife turned to me, her eyes wide with shock and hurt. "What's going on?" she demanded. "What does she mean?" Before I could answer, my mother spoke up. Her voice was cold, disappointment dripping from every word. "I can't believe you've ruined this day," she said. "We were supposed to be celebrating, not this." She gestured vaguely at my wife, who flinched as if she'd been slapped. My father, who had been silent until now, stood up slowly. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, his face drawn and tired. "Son," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment, "you need to fix this, and fast. Otherwise, don't expect to see us anytime soon." With that, he took my mother's arm, and they left, leaving behind a silence so thick you could cut it with a knife. My younger brother and his wife exchanged uncomfortable glances before mumbling congratulations and making a hasty exit. My youngest sister lingered for a moment, looking torn. She gave my wife a quick hug and whispered something in her ear before following the others out. And just like that, we were alone. The remnants of what was supposed to be a joyous celebration surrounded us: half-eaten cake, discarded wrapping paper, and the lingering echo of raised voices. My wife turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "What just happened?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why is everyone so upset? What aren't you telling me?" I felt like I was caught in a nightmare. How could I explain this to her? How could I tell her that her moment of joy had just reopened wounds that hadn't even begun to heal? I opened my mouth, closed it again, then finally managed to say, "It's complicated. I need some time to think." She stared at me incredulously. "Time to think? Your entire family just walked out on us, on our baby announcement, and you need time to think." Her voice rose with each word, anger and hurt battling for dominance. "Please," I begged. "I promise I'll explain everything. I need to process this first." My wife shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I thought this would be the happiest day of our lives," she said softly. "I never imagined." She trailed off, then turned and walked out of the room. I heard our bedroom door slam shut a moment later. Now, I'm sitting here in our destroyed living room, surrounded by the remnants of my birthday party and the shattered pieces of what I thought was a healing family. My phone is blowing up with messages, angry texts from my parents and sister, confused ones from my brother and youngest sister. I haven't looked at any of them. I can't. I know I messed up. I should have told my wife about what happened with my sister. I should have prepared her, warned her, but how could I? It wasn't my secret to tell. I was trying to protect my sister's privacy, trying to give her the space and time she needed to heal. Instead, I've managed to hurt everyone I love. I don't know how to fix this. Our marriage, which I thought was rock solid, suddenly feels fragile. The tentative peace in my family has been shattered, and what should have been one of the happiest moments of our lives has turned into a complete disaster. How do I even begin to make this right? How do I explain to my wife why her joyous news was met with such hostility? How do I comfort my sister, who's clearly still in pain? How do I face my parents, who look at me like I failed them somehow? I feel like I'm drowning, caught between loyalty to my sister and honesty with my wife. I love them both, and I've managed to hurt them both. I don't know which way to turn, who to comfort first, how to start rebuilding the bridges I've inadvertently burned. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I'm lost, and I don't know how to find my way back from this. How do I balance my sister's need for privacy with my wife's right to know what's going on? How do I mend the rift in my family without causing more pain? I keep replaying the moment of my wife's announcement in my head, the joy in her eyes, the excitement in her voice. She's wanted this for so long, and now I've tainted that moment for her. Will she ever be able to look back on this day with anything but pain and confusion? And my sister, God, my sister, I can still see her face, the way it crumpled when my wife made her announcement. I should have known, should have anticipated this, but I was so caught up in the moment, in the rare feeling of family togetherness, that I let my guard down. I failed her, failed to protect her from this pain. My parents' disappointment is another weight on my shoulders. They've always expected me to be the responsible one, the peacekeeper. Now they look at me like I'm a stranger, like I've betrayed them somehow. How do I earn back their trust? I know I need to talk to my wife, to explain everything, but I'm terrified. What if she never forgives me for keeping this from her? What if this secret, this mess, destroys the beautiful thing we've built together? The thought of losing her, of losing our unborn child, is almost too much to bear. But I also know I can't hide in this room forever. Sooner or later, I'm going to have to face the music. I'm going to have to look my wife in the eye and tell her why her pregnancy announcement was met with anger instead of joy. I'm going to have to reach out to my sister and try to mend the rift I've caused. I'm going to have to face my parents and explain myself. The weight of it all feels crushing. How did one moment, one announcement, manage to unravel everything? And more importantly, how do I even begin to stitch it all back together? I love my family. I love my wife. I want to be excited about this baby. But right now, all I feel is an overwhelming sense of guilt and fear. I've messed up, and I don't know if I can fix it. If anyone has been in a similar situation, or has any advice on how to navigate this minefield I've created, I'm all ears. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, And I don't know if my next step will lead me back to solid ground or send me tumbling into the abyss. I keep thinking about the wish I made when I blew out my birthday candles. I wished for family harmony, for the good feelings of that moment to last. Instead, I got this. Be careful what you wish for, I guess. Or maybe the lesson is that wishes aren't enough. It takes work, honesty, and communication to keep a family together. All things I've failed at spectacularly today. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know if I'll wake up to divorce papers or more angry messages I don't know. All I know is that I need to start fixing this, and I need to do it soon, before it's too late, before I lose everything and everyone I love. So, Reddit, what do I do? How do I begin to untangle this mess I've made? How do I support my sister, make amends with my parents, and salvage my marriage all at the same time? Is it even possible? Or have I well and truly screwed everything up beyond repair? I'm sorry for the long post. I guess I needed to get it all out. Thank you for reading, if you've made it this far. Any advice, any words of wisdom, anything at all would be appreciated. I'm drowning here, and I don't know which way is up anymore. Update 1. It's been 2 days since my disastrous birthday party, and I feel like I've aged years in just 48 hours. I promised to update once I'd talked to my wife, so here goes. First, I want to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Your advice and support have been a lifeline during this nightmare. To those who called me out for my poor communication and lack of honesty, you were absolutely right. I've made a mess of things, and it's time to start cleaning it up. Last night, I finally sat down with my wife to explain everything. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. Here's what happened. I found my wife in our bedroom, curled up on the bed. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy. When I came in, she looked at me with a mixture of hurt, anger, and confusion that broke my heart. I took a deep breath and started from the beginning. I told her about my sister's pregnancy a few months ago, how excited everyone had been. Then I told her about the miscarriage and the devastating news that followed. Due to complications, my sister would never be able to get pregnant again. The miscarriage happened just a month before my birthday, I explained, my voice breaking. My sister. She's been devastated. She's barely left her house, barely spoken to anyone. This party was the first time she'd really been out in weeks. I watched as understanding dawned on my wife's face, quickly followed by horror and then guilt. "Oh God," she whispered, and I just announced our pregnancy in front of everyone. In front of her, I nodded, feeling the weight of our collective mistake. "I should have told you," I said. I was trying to respect my sister's privacy, to give her time to heal and tell people in her own time. But I realize now that I was wrong. You're my wife. You're carrying our child. You had a right to know. My wife was quiet for a long moment, processing everything I'd said. Then she looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I understand why you didn't tell me," she said softly, "but it hurts that you didn't trust me with this. We're supposed to be partners, to face everything together." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She was right, of course. In trying to protect my sister, I'd broken the trust with my wife. We talked for hours after that, about the baby, about my family, about our fears and hopes for the future. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. By the end of it, I felt like we'd taken the first step towards healing. The next morning, I called my sister. It took several attempts before she finally answered. Her voice was cold when she picked up, but she agreed to meet us the following day for coffee. It was a start, but I was nervous about how it would go. The next day, we met my sister at a quiet cafe near her house. When we walked in, I saw her sitting in a corner booth, looking small and fragile. My heart ached seeing her like this. My big sister, always so strong and composed, now seemed like she might shatter at any moment. As we approached the table, my wife squeezed my hand hard. I could feel her trembling slightly. "Hi," I said softly as we reached the table. My sister looked up, her eyes moving from me to my wife. For a moment, I thought she might get up and leave, but then she nodded slightly, gesturing for us to sit down. My wife took a deep breath and spoke first. "I am so sorry," she said, her voice shaking. "I had no idea about what happened. If I had known, I never would have announced our pregnancy like that. I feel terrible for causing you pain." My sister's face remained impassive as she listened. When my wife finished, she turned to me. "And you?" she asked, her voice hard. "What's your excuse for not telling your wife about this?" I swallowed hard. "I don't have an excuse," I said. "I thought I was protecting your privacy, giving you space to heal. But I was wrong. I should have been honest with my wife, and I should have prepared everyone better. I'm sorry, sis. I messed up." My sister was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, tinged with sadness. "Do you know what it's like," she said, "to want something so badly, to finally have it within your grasp, and then to have it ripped away, and not just temporarily, but forever?" She went on to describe her pain, the feeling of loss, not just of her baby, but of the future she had imagined. It was heart-wrenching to hear, and I realized just how much she had been suffering in silence. My wife reached out hesitantly, placing her hand on my sister's. To my surprise and relief, my sister didn't pull away. "I can't imagine how much pain you're in," my wife said softly. "And I'm so sorry that our news added to that pain. Is there anything we can do?" My sister gave a sad laugh. "Can you turn back time? Make it so none of this ever happened?" We sat in silence for a while after that, each of us lost in our own thoughts. Finally, my sister spoke again. "I don't blame you," she said, looking at my wife. "You didn't know, and," she turned to me, "I understand why you didn't say anything. I know you were trying to protect me, but it still hurts." "I know," I said, "and I'm so sorry." My sister nodded, then took a deep breath. "I can't pretend I'm okay with all of this. It's going to take time for me to come to terms with everything. But I don't want to lose my family over this. I don't want to miss out on being an aunt to your child." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. We talked for a while longer, making tentative plans to meet again in a few weeks. As we were leaving, my sister hugged us both. It was a brief hug, but it felt like a lifeline. So that's where we are now. We've taken the first steps towards healing, but we still have a long way to go. My parents are still not speaking to me, and I'm not sure how to begin repairing that relationship. My younger siblings are caught in the middle, unsure of how to react to all of this. But for the first time since my birthday, I feel a glimmer of hope. My wife and I are on the same page now, united in our desire to make things right. We're going to face this together, as we should have from the start. I know we have a lot of challenges ahead. Navigating my sister's grief while preparing for our own child won't be easy. There will be days when the guilt feels overwhelming, days when the joy of our pregnancy is tempered by the knowledge of my sister's loss. But I'm committed to being there for both my wife and my sister, to being honest, even when it's difficult, to facing our problems head-on instead of trying to avoid them. Thank you all again for your support and advice. It's been a stark reminder of the importance of honesty and open communication in a relationship. I'm determined not to make the same mistakes again. I'll update again as things develop, hopefully with more positive news next time. Update 2. It's been about 3 weeks since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have been progressing with my family situation. There's been some positive movement, but we're still navigating some choppy waters. First, the good news. My sister seems to be slowly coming to terms with our pregnancy. We've been meeting for coffee once a week, just the two of us. These meetings were awkward at first, with long silences and stilted conversation, but they're gradually becoming more comfortable. During our last meeting, my sister actually asked about the baby. It was a small thing, just a question about how far along my wife is now, but it felt like a huge step. I could see it was difficult for her, but the fact that she's trying means the world to me. She's also started seeing a therapist specializing in grief counseling. I'm really proud of her for taking that step. She says it's helping her process her emotions and find healthier ways to cope with her loss. My wife has been incredible throughout all of this. She's given my sister space when needed, but has also reached out in small ways, sending a thoughtful text message or dropping off my sister's favorite cookies. It's a delicate balance, but I think it's helping. Now, for the more challenging parts. My parents are still keeping their distance. They've started responding to my texts, but their replies are short and formal. I've tried inviting them over for dinner, but they always have an excuse. Last week, I decided to visit them unannounced. It wasn't the warmest reception, but at least they let me in. We had a long, difficult conversation. They expressed their disappointment in how I handled the situation and how they feel I've changed since getting married. We raised you to be more considerate, my mom said, to put family first. We don't understand how you could keep something so important from your wife, or how you could let your sister be blindsided like that. It was hard to hear, but I knew they had a point. I apologized again and tried to explain my thought process, flawed as it was. I also shared how I've been trying to make amends and support both my wife and my sister. By the end of the visit, things were still tense, but I felt like we'd made a tiny bit of progress. They agreed to come over for dinner next week, which feels like a small victory. My younger siblings have been more understanding. They've been acting as a kind of bridge between me and my parents, which I appreciate. My youngest sister, in particular, has been a great support. She's been spending time with our older sister, helping her get out of the house more. As for my wife and me, we're doing better. The initial shock and hurt have faded, and we're focusing on our future. We've started preparing for the baby, though we're keeping things low-key out of respect for my sister. We've also been going to couples counseling. It's helping us work through the trust issues that came up and teaching us better ways to communicate. I'm learning that it's okay to share difficult things with my wife, that she's strong enough to handle it, and that we're stronger together. There have been some challenging moments. Last week, we had our first ultrasound. It was an incredibly joyful experience for us, but it was tinged with sadness, knowing that my sister will never have this moment. We're still figuring out how to balance our happiness with sensitivity to my sister's loss. Overall, I feel like we're moving in the right direction, even if progress is slow. There are still moments of tension and sadness, but there are also moments of hope and healing. I know we have a long road ahead. My sister's journey of healing will be ongoing, and it will take time to fully rebuild trust with my parents. But I'm committed to putting in the work, to being there for my family in whatever way they need. One thing I've been grappling with lately is the guilt. Even as things slowly improve, I can't shake the feeling that I'm responsible for causing so much pain to the people I love. My therapist says this is normal, but it doesn't make it any easier to deal with. There are moments when I see my wife's excitement about the baby, when she's browsing through baby name books or looking at nursery designs, and I feel a pang of sadness. Not because I'm not happy about the baby, but because I know my sister will never experience these moments. It's a strange mix of joy and sorrow that I'm still learning to navigate. My wife and I have decided to find out the baby's gender, but we're keeping it a secret from everyone else, including my sister. We feel it's best to minimize any potential triggers for her. It's just one of the many ways we're trying to be sensitive to her feelings while still allowing ourselves to enjoy this pregnancy. Work has been another challenge. I took a few days off after the birthday party incident, but now I'm back and trying to focus. It's not easy. My colleagues have noticed that something's off, but I've been vague about the details. It's hard to explain such a complex family situation to people who don't know us well. On a positive note, my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, reached out to me last week. We met for a beer, and he shared how he's been supporting my sister through all of this. It was good to hear his perspective and to know that my sister has such a strong support system at home. He also mentioned that they're considering adoption, which gives me hope that they might find a different path to parenthood. My wife and I have also been discussing how to handle things once the baby arrives. We want my sister to be involved as much as she's comfortable with, but we don't want to push her. We're thinking of asking her to be the baby's godmother, but we're not sure if that would be helpful or hurtful. It's just one of the many delicate decisions we're facing. Looking ahead, I know we still have challenges to overcome. The baby shower is coming up, and we're trying to figure out how to handle that sensitively. We're considering having a small, intimate gathering rather than a big party, out of respect for my sister's feelings. Despite all the difficulties, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. This experience has taught me so much about the importance of open communication, empathy, and family bonds. It's been a painful lesson, but I believe it's making me a better husband, brother, and soon-to-be father. To anyone out there facing similar family conflicts, I want to say, don't give up. It's hard work, and progress can be frustratingly slow, but healing is possible. Be patient, be kind to yourself and others, and keep trying. That's what I'm going to do. Thank you all again for your support and advice. It means more than you know. I'll continue to update as things progress.